We now go to audience questions, which will be read by our previously introduced society presidents. First, I'll ask for a question from Joey Ralph from Soma, for Mr. Miravalle.
John Mark, the first question for you this evening is, why do you believe in the God you do rather than any other or multiple?
Yeah, well, I think I've given the proofs for why I believe in the God I do, so I don't think there's time for this. What does that mean, though? I believe in an infinite, perfect God who is the source of all our existence and who is the source of our moral convictions. Now, I'm not here to defend my beliefs as a Catholic, but if the question is, why am I a Catholic? Is that the question that everyone wants to know about?
I would assume so.
Oh, good, that's easy. So, even though, again, that's not the point of this debate, right? The debate isn't, should John Mark be Catholic, but does God exist? I'm happy to share that, to me, it seems that the Catholic faith is the belief in God which has the greatest respect for reason, a complete absence of doctrinal contradiction, and the only mechanism... See, this is why it becomes a very different debate if we talk about religious beliefs, doesn't it? But all the same, I believe that the doctrinal history of the Church, and I'd be very, very happy to talk to any of you about it. I work at the St. Lawrence Center here on campus. The Catholic doctrine has a complete absence of inherent contradiction, internal contradiction. And lastly, it's the only religion I've ever seen with a mechanism for uniting all those who profess to believe in it. Thank you.
And something I'll offer to both of you as well. If you would like to offer a thought on that question, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Just briefly, every religion contains within itself a mechanism for uniting the followers of that religion. So that's no big plus for Catholicism.
From St. Thomas, please.
Mr. Barker, you stated in your argument that we receive our morality from our ancestors. Where did our ancestors receive their morality?
Yeah, I didn't say we received our morality from our ancestors. I said, as Thomas Jefferson said, that we do have moral instincts, some instincts. And as I clearly said in my statement, which John Mark ignored, there is a solid natural basis for those instincts, and that is survival. Our ancestors made decisions that led to a greater chance that they would survive and have offspring. The ones who made poor decisions, not just ours, but any species on the planet, the ones who made poor decisions did not pass on that tendency to the same degree as those who made good survival decisions. Therefore, you and I are here as a result of an unbroken chain of successful ancestors who made decisions, or at least were lucky enough to avoid harm. So survival is a harm question, and they survived harm and were able to reproduce, and we inherited that. That's part of our moral instinct. It's not the whole thing, because we have a frontal lobe now that has evolved more recently, which checks, which is more of a moral or social checking. The frontal lobe is the part of your body that's keeping you from burping out loud right now, or farting in this audience. You know, I mean, maybe you want to, but wait, I'm checking. That's part of a natural process of the brain that we inherited from ancestors. So we don't get all of our moral decisions from our ancestors, but we do have instincts, and so do other animals. So do chimpanzees, so do whales, so do dolphins, so do they sacrifice and cooperate. We are a social species. And it made more sense for our ancestors to survive by cooperating as a social species than not. So we inherited from those ancestors of ours those natural biological instincts as the natural biological organisms that we are, which nudge us toward actions that on balance, it's not perfect, but on balance increases the likelihood that we will survive and avoid harm in the real world. The other step is to use reason, if you don't have a credential, use reason to evaluate the consequences, because morality is just a question of harm. That's all it is, real harm. It's not a real harm for John to feel nervous about a debate. That's not a harm. The harm would be if he tripped and hurt himself because he was so scared. That's where the harm comes from, in which case I would hope to catch you when you were falling, as a naturally evolved human being.
Thank you. Do you care to respond?
Yeah, I catch you too, Dan. And also, certainly a desire for survival is not necessarily the source of morality, because I could try to kill someone so I could harvest their organs for myself to survive. That would be bad. in terms of survival of the species, we have no idea what contributes to the survival of the species. We're not all demographers or evolutionary populationists or anything like that. So what does that leave us with? Well, it leaves us with instincts. And some instincts are good, and some instincts are bad. So those obviously aren't either the source of morality, because I may have an instinct to beat the tar out of the guy who cuts in front of me at the checkout line, and that's an instinct I should resist. So neither survival of the species, nor survival of the individual, nor instincts can possibly be the source of our understanding of what is right and wrong.
Thank you.
Next question from someone.
John Mark, I'll briefly preface this with saying that we received a high volume of questions dealing with the creation of evil, existence of evil, and whatnot.
Oh, yes.
And so I just keep that in mind with this particular question. It's the best example that we found. If God exists, then does the devil also exist? And if so, did God essentially create evil?
Great, good question. So again, I think it's pretty simple, right? Why is there evil? Why is there suffering? Well, we've proven that God can't be the source of evil and suffering because he's infinitely perfect. And we know from experience that we are capable of doing evil things which sometimes result in suffering even of the innocent. So philosophically, not religiously speaking here, what we can say is that the existence of evil and the suffering of the innocent in the world must, by reason, be attributed to us or to things like us, who are capable of making evil decisions and initiating suffering into the world. God can't, based on the logical proofs we've given, be the source of evil. What's left? Well, our experience tells us.
Well, I would say briefly that in the Bible that you claim to believe has no contradictions, God very clearly claimed in Isaiah 45:7, I created evil. The Hebrew word there is ra. The Hebrew word for create is bara. So God admits that he created evil. How could evil exist unless God created it? So according to your Bible, evil is something that God created. But you said during the rebuttal, God cannot command what is intrinsically evil. How does anyone know? How does even God know what is intrinsically evil? Morality means getting along and avoiding dangers and threats and harms. That's what morality means. If the word morality just means obeying orders, then nothing is right and nothing is wrong except what God decrees, which is why I asked you if God told you to kill me. If he did, I'm not saying that he would or wouldn't. If he did, would you do it? A command theory of morality from a God who doesn't even give his reasons for what is intrinsically good or evil is not even a moral being itself. We all possess within ourselves a natural feeling of those things that are likely to cause harm and are likely to avoid harms. That's what we would call relative to our species intrinsically evil. God cannot be the source of that because he's not a physical being like we are.
Thank you. The next question will be from St. Thomas. John Mark, you will have an additional 45 seconds to respond. Please.
Mr. Barker, this question asks, how did something come from nothing?
I have a whole chapter on that in my next book that's coming out, but basically, science shows that something does come from nothing. If nothing is defined, first, nothing really can't be defined, and John touched on that actually quite eloquently earlier, that nothingness can't even be defined because you're defining something if you're defining nothingness. So even if there is a God, there had to be something. There always had to be something if there's a God. So somethingness is a brute fact. But we know from science that in the complete vacuum of space where there is no matter at all, we do see the creation of virtual particles and antiparticles, which occasionally results in the creation of, when one of them might separate, like at the event horizon of a black hole, one of them might go this way. You do see actually the creation of something from nothing in the actual universe of ourselves. But it depends how you define nothing. There was quantum potential there, obviously. But if there's a God, if there's a God sitting over here, here's God and he's something, and over there is nothingness. Are you picturing some kind of a cosmos where there's this being who's everything, and suddenly over there there's this nothingness? What is that nothingness from which this God somehow decided to create something? That's an incoherent concept. Unless you define nothingness in terms of somethingness, you're asking a question that doesn't even have any meaning to it.
I mean, yeah. I think the third proof answers the question. Something doesn't come from nothing. God is the infinite being, which means, again, there is no nothing, which means that our something, our existence, our reality, is where God shares his reality with us in constituting us. So there's no logical problems there. And to say that something can come from nothing, right? And scientists love to talk about emergence, especially atheistic scientists. And emergence, it's kind of like saying a rabbit emerges from a magician's hat. It doesn't really explain where the rabbit came from. And neither does it explain how things came to be and how something greater can come from something lesser. There's got to be rabbits where the rabbit came from. I would say there's got to be intelligence and life at the source of the intelligence and life that we see around us.
We have time for one more set of questions.
All right, John Mark, like I said before, I'll briefly preface this. We did receive a high volume of questions referring to your personal beliefs. And to tie it back to the debate, I would believe that this was the best question. Do you consider the Bible in its entirety essential to your belief of God or non-essential? And if so, how do you deal with the issues of certain things that may be immoral, such as the fact that women are possessions or child abuse in the Bible?
Yeah, good, thanks. And thanks for using essential and non-essential. It's nice when you use my terms, very cool. Again, this is my personal belief, so what I say, whether you agree with it or not, doesn't affect the arguments that we've shown that prove that God exists. No, all the same, I'm happy to share my beliefs. And that is, as a Catholic, that the Bible is essential. It's in the sense that it's indispensable, but it sure isn't sufficient. G.K. Chesterton said that the Bible smasher is just the Bible worshiper turned upside down. I don't worship the Bible. I don't think it's enough. The Catholic Church has never thought it's enough. Those texts need to be interpreted very, very carefully by a competent authority. I think Dan has shown compellingly to me that we ourselves as individuals are not a competent authority. We make all kinds of mistakes. We're all kinds of fallible. So it seems to me that if the Bible is true, and I think it is, there's got to be something else, some other mechanism that's also true that can help us make sense of it. And that's why I think the Bible requires a belief in the pontifical magisterium. Okay.
Do you care to respond?
Only that I used to believe the Bible was reliable, and I preached it, and I based my life on it. But I now know that it's not. It's internally contradictory, it is unscientific, it is unhistorical. There is some truth in the Bible, but on balance, it's not a reliable guide for truth or for morality. The moral teachings that are in the Bible, as some of you are pointing out here, we would lock that being up if he lived in the same neighborhood with us. I wouldn't want to live in the same neighborhood with that God who commits and commands and condones the mass killings and the discrimination of women and the beating of slaves and so on. It is a morally bankrupt and horrible book, and you should be ashamed of yourself to consider it a part of your religion. It is not a source of morality or reliable truth.
Mr. Barker, we got a lot of these, so I'm going to have. We decided to ask you this: what evidence of God would be, and would it have to be something that everyone would agree on for you to believe in it?
Yeah, atheism is exquisitely falsifiable. If Jesus were to materialize here on this stage in front of us, and we captured it on videotape, if Jesus would just answer his own promise that all things whatsoever you shall ask for in prayer believing you shall receive, or the prayer of faith will heal the sick, if he would just answer his own promises and keep his own promises, that would be strong evidence. If God were to tell John Mark knows this God personally apparently. If God were to tell John Mark that tomorrow at 12:13 and 7 seconds, a meteorite from the south-southwest weighing 14 ounces would penetrate this building and end up 12 inches below the basement of this building, composed of 40% iron and 3% iridium and so on. And if tomorrow that actually happened, I would say, all right, where do I send my check?
Yeah, I thought, first of all, it was interesting you spent half the question talking about what it would take to make him believe in Jesus, which certainly wasn't the question. And then the second part saying it would take some sort of prediction to confirm his belief in God, some sort of improbable prediction, which I think is strange because I'm sure that we could interpret my prediction of some improbable event, like a specific form of meteorite crashing, some other way than God's existence. I have to say, it seems to me that my proofs are actually much stronger than the proof that Dan is looking for. So I'm happy to see that.